Speaking with you about Abominable and the Invisible City. I am in love with this series. I binged the first 10 episodes, and one of the greatest standout elements for me is not only the score, the beautiful classical violin pieces, but your instrumentation, and then of course a different theme at the end of each show, a different musical score. With the end titles. I just think this is, from a musical level, this is beautiful.
Yeah, it was definitely a dream come true for me to work on a project that allowed me to be so musical and to, at just about every level, allow the music to tell the story, enhance the visuals, and be the magic of the characters. And like you mentioned, the end credit music being different.
Yeah.
I initially thought I would just write one piece of end credit music and be done. And instead, the producers wanted me to write a different theme for every end credit. So I took on the challenge, even though it was more work for me and less sleep. But it was just wonderful to get to have this, piece of music every episode that is not playing under dialogue and sound effects, and people can just hear it.
I was enchanted by that, and each end credit score piece, motif, it really captured what we had just seen, but particularly like in the case of episode 9, Chinese New Year, because that was a part 1, you end it with these dynamic drums, really building the tension for what's going to happen in episode 10 for the conclusion of the new year. That was almost as exciting as when you see sneak previews at the end of a TV show on the next episode of, and your music serves as that with Abominable.
Oh, it certainly. I love that you pointed out that episode 9 credit music, because it's also the same music that opens episode 10. So it directly links you into the next episode.
What you also do here, and I think it's episode 2 where you did this, where they're trying to draw magical creatures to them. And Peng says to Yi, it's like, hey, maybe they just don't like your music. You need to change it up. And you basically it sounds like you take the same theme, Yi's theme, and then you change it up and you turn it into country and you turn it into hip-hop and you give us all these different musical genre flares. And that's so exciting to hear, because that encompasses so many different demographics and styles and personalities of the characters.
I have to say that I love variety. I don't listen to only classical music, and so when that episode, which was actually the first one that I worked on, had me do episode 2 before episode 1, my friend who I had met at a friend's wedding, Ruolin, she was the director of that episode, and she actually told me there's this rooftop dance party that is going to have some great musical moments. And when I got that, it was just, for me, it was a party because I got to play around in all these different musical genres and feature Yi's playing the violin in every one of them. So everything from like a classical waltz to, like you said, like hip hop, like Peng does beatboxing and playing violin over it. That was so much fun. Definitely a blast.
And the instrumentation from episode to episode of the scores and the various motifs, you have a very eclectic blend of instrumentation. I love whenever we see the feather or the pedals, or piggybacking on Yi and her more classical take with the violin. You bring in a lot of like the Asian woodwind sounds, as well as possibly some flutes. I'm not quite sure if it was flute or piccolo I was picking up in a few instances. But talk to me about the instrumentation that you utilized for these various episodes and these various motifs, because it is varied.
Yeah. So I've actually been waiting for over a decade for a project like this to come along, because I have a collection of Chinese wind instruments. I initially started playing piano and clarinet as a child, but I quickly grew to want to learn anything and everything. So even in high school marching band, I was playing xylophones, and I picked up guitar and harp in college, and as well as these Chinese wind instruments, which include an instrument called the bawu, which is spelled B-A-W-U, and that is, it looks like a flute, but it actually has a metal reed in it, so it's actually more similar to the clarinet. So being a clarinet player, I was very easily able to adapt to that and sort of taught myself how to play it. And this was, about 20 years ago when I when I encountered this instrument and bought one and taught myself to play it. And so now to get to have this amazing TV show that takes place in China, has all these incredible magical fantasy elements, allowing me to go beyond the typical Western orchestral sound and kind of expand on that with other instrumentation. It was just a dream come true, and I'm so grateful for the opportunity to do that with the music.
Listening to the music for Abominable and the Invisible City, for me, is as exciting as listening to what Brian Tyler does for Yellowstone, bringing in all kinds of unique instrumentation that we're not used to hearing. You do that here. And that is just, it's so wonderful if people are actually listening to the score that is accompanying the beautiful visuals that are just a delight to look at, and characters that are just so much fun. How do you even approach a specific episode to score for it? Obviously, you have your character motifs that will pop up in multiple episodes, but scoring each episode itself with the different thematics and different new magical creatures that we see, how do you approach an episode?
Well, each episode, I always like to start with themes, and I personally just love to write melodies. So, I basically decide if there's a significant creature. What is that creature's theme? What inspires me to write something? And I'm looking at the way they move and their sort of personality quirks and their characteristics, and that helps inform me. Is this more ancient and magical, or is it more fun and quirky? And so that's where I start, and then. Obviously, every episode, starting with a blank page is always intimidating. So the thing is to break things down and just say, okay, I'm just going to write this 30 seconds and not worry about the other 20 minutes of music that I have to write. And so, you just sort of minimize what your focus is. And so you do scene by scene, and eventually you get to the end and you've done 20 minutes of music, and it's a wonderful feeling.
How early do you get the animation to score to? Or are you just given individual shots?
I was actually brought in early on Abominable to really compose a lot of the what's called source music. And that's where, as the audience, we hear Yi and Everest either play violin or hum, which is how they create their magic.
Right.
And so I'm brought in actually pretty early on. I was, I started a year and a half ago, basically before the premiere of this series. And I was writing to animatics, which is sort of like a bunch of storyboards cut together.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's a very rough version, and a lot of the timing will eventually change in the final animation. But yeah, I started writing a lot of that music early on, and that actually became a lot of the themes that we hear throughout the score. And then so later on, when they have the final animation, given that, and so the timing is fairly locked at that point. I have 2 weeks to write a first pass on it, and then there's some back and forth, and then there's a final animation, and then so we have to adjust a little bit for that. But really, it's about 2 weeks to write almost 20 minutes of music per episode, and then a little bit of time for revisions and building. And I should mention that while I'm doing that, I'm doing revisions on other episodes and delivering them. So it's a lot of work going on, but it's very satisfying, gratifying work.
Well, I know, going back to magical creatures for a minute, I just have to say that I think what you composed for Sewer Koi is beautiful as a magical creature, because you really get the sense of the fluidity of water and of the koi's movement through the air and in the water. And I really love your scoring for that.
Yeah, so with Sewer Koi, again, I was looking at what sort of characteristics, and it's the idea of water and flowing, and floating either through water or air, because the character does fly. And so that sort of inspired the, I guess, flowing nature, the way it's orchestrated with cascading harp and keyboard instruments. And the melody itself is, it's sort of, I wanted it to feel like sort of an ancient Chinese theme.
Mm-hmm.
So, using the very, stereotypical, like, Chinese pentatonic scale, I sort of derived the melody from that.
Wow. It's beautiful. And then I listened to something like what you composed for Todd the Toad. And there's a lot more whimsy to Todd.
Yeah, definitely.
Just like there's a lot more whimsy to Peng as a character. So I really love that. Do you have a favorite magical creature that you have composed for?
You're reminding me about a lot of really music that I really love writing. So it's hard to say, but I think there's a fondness between myself as well as the team working on the show for Hong's theme, which is the magical phoenix that we meet in episode 1.
Mm-hmm.
And that was one of the first things I actually composed. And that's also another sort of very heartfelt, magical, and sort of has some Chinese inflection with the pentatonic scale. And so that theme, everyone just responded really well to it, and I loved it so much that I expanded it, and it sort of became the magical creatures theme. And so you actually hear it in a lot of epic moments throughout the series, through all the episodes.
Each one is as beautiful as the next, but also very distinctive. I never get tired of listening to just the scoring of these episodes. I think it's all beautiful. Absolutely beautiful, George.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate how much you've paid attention to the music. I hope others do too, and I'm very fortunate that DreamWorks is releasing the soundtrack on October the 7th, so people can hear it without all the talking and sound effects in the way, and they can hear just the music.
Is there one episode that you like more, that you have a particular fondness for?
I'm sort of torn between the first and last episode. So one was had a pretty epic action sequence at the end, but I think episode 10, to not give anything away, but it had just a huge emotional arc.
Mm-hmm.
That just really the the magical, emotional music at the end, which you will definitely hear on the soundtrack. It's gorgeous, it's heartfelt, and it was just so special. Given what happens at the end.
Yes.
The climax. So
Oh.
that's what I'll say about that without giving away spoilers.
Let me just say, at the end of episode 10 and that climactic moment, I got very teary when we realize what is happening with the magic.
Yes, I was crying myself when I would write the music and then I'd play it back with the picture and just sort of sit back and admire what I've done. Like that brought tears to my eyes. It's also something that I'll just say that family is big in Asian culture, particularly in Chinese culture. But there's also a sort of a disconnect between generations, particularly with immigrant parents and those of us who are, like myself, who are born in the U.S.
Mm-hmm.
So that knowing just even like my own experiences, and those are my friends and family, that it was just so special to see that.
Well, I'm glad I'm not the only one who got all weepy and teary with episode 10.
That was my goal. Thank you.
Do you know yet? I'd asked Ruolin this the other day when I spoke with her. Where are we going to get a season 2? And if so, will you be involved?
It would certainly be a dream to see more Abominable, but we'll have to wait and see. And hopefully this first season does well. I like when to see it.
Fingers crossed. Fingers crossed, George. Oh, this has been so lovely getting to talk with you. I love speaking with composers. And what you have given us with Abominable is just beautiful. And I want more.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate how in-depth you got into the music. So that makes me feel great. And I hope it will go on and be heard and seen by people and hopefully inspire a new generation of musicians as well.
Yes, and I hope we get to speak again in the future.
Myself included. I hope so too.
George, thank you so much. And you have a great weekend.
Yes, you have a great one too. Thank you so much.